before I start today's podcast, I just want to send out all the love and good vibes and prayers to Billy Chaser from the Game Chasers. He revealed yesterday that he's in the hospital for a brain tumor. Most of you probably don't know the channel The Game Chasers and how influential it has been on my life. Dom Douglas doesn't exist. This podcast doesn't exist. Dom Douglas, the commentator for professional wrestling for XWW, sister company to Max Heroes and Villains, doesn't exist because when I discovered the Game Chaser show, that lit a spark under me to learn how to edit and do my own derivative version of their show called The Gaming Oniomaniacs on my pretty much defunct YouTube channel. I still have it. I've had it for like 14, 15 years almost at this point, if not longer. And you can check it out at Zero Trade and Value Productions. If I didn't learn how to edit because I was so inspired by that show, I wouldn't have been able to translate years later, almost a decade later, into getting into this crazy world of professional wrestling. So, Billy Chaser, much love. And I can't wait to see the video of you not walking out of the hospital, as you say, but running out of the hospital. That being said, intro time. My name is Dom Douglas, and I've been playing Magic the Gathering for what seems like forever, but in fact, it's only been on and off for about 30 years. With that comes an expectation that I'm the best player ever. You couldn't be any more wrong in that statement. What I do like, however, is having a lot of fun. Whether it be playing Limited, Draft, Commander, Standard when I get the chance, Arena, Magic the Gathering Online, it doesn't matter as long as a good time is had. And with that, I have some opinions, not just of Magic the Gathering, but also video games, comics, maybe even a TV show or two. This is the Goblin Grenade Podcast. So, what did I miss in the last couple of weeks? Oh, by the way, this is the second time I've done this podcast because, as I alluded to earlier on my social media, I recorded this yesterday, August 27th, and then went to edit it up and realized I did not have my microphone on. That's what happens when you don't do a podcast for a month, because I extended my vacation by a week or two because I was just feeling it. Let me turn up a little bit right now. There we go. And so the other bit of news, I will be relocating to New Jersey in the next couple of months. This podcast will still be going on. I will be doing it from New Jersey. And I think it's time for me personally. Much love to Manny and Max Heroes and Villains for the support in my decision for relocating. And but yes, this podcast will still be going on a weekly basis. This is a weird one because it's going to be on a Friday. We will be back to our Tuesday schedule. Yes, I'm making them Tuesdays now, even though usually news hits on that day. I don't care. Moving to Jersey back again, my friends, my family, my partner's there. I've been in a relationship with her for 6 years now at this point, almost 5-6 years, and it's time for me. So, in the interim, in the couple of weeks that I was there in New Jersey on my vacation and deciding to move back, a lot of things happened in Magic the Gathering. And for Edge of Eternities, I was wrong. I am so glad that I was wrong on the set, because my biggest fear was when they were the space opera set, that it was going to go so hard on the memes, so hard on the in-jokes, so hard on, we did this legally distinct difference between a space shuttle, where the Ace shuttle, Space Jace exists. I was so afraid of that. I've played some. I've drafted on Arena a bit. I like the set. Thematically, it is great. And mechanics are pretty okay, because the station mechanic is, if you have a craft, you can tap untapped creatures during your turn, and it'll get counters on it for its power. And when that station hits X amount of power, you get to do cool things. I think they erred on the side of caution and made the station numbers to power up to get, like, say, tap to add 1 green mana for every creature you control, or at the beginning of your upkeep, if the station number's been hit, put a 2/2 creature on the field. I think they went too high on the numbers personally. If they were lowered by 2 to 3 points each station, it might be viable and playable. That being said, even in limited, it's kind of hit or miss. In standard, I haven't seen much of stations being used. I only do free open play on Arena, not ranked yet, but I haven't seen any of the station mechanics being used. But thematically is great. It's not a hat set. It's not like Murders at Karlov Manor, where everything was a detective and they were wearing hats and it was like the clue set that went in on it. It's also not like Duskmourn, which was great mechanics, terrible thematics. In Duskmourn, did we need baseball bats in the set because Lucille exists in a secret lair already? It's the Stranger Things set. Did we need TVs and proton packs? Did we need those in Magic the Gathering's universe? No. But the mechanics of the set are really good. What is it? Outlaws of Thunder Junction, the Cowboys set, the Wild West set. Too hard in the paint on the Wild West themes. Aether Drift is the biggest criminal of the sets, if you will, for that. Not only is mechanically not really good, thematically it is terrible. NASCAR the set is the biggest failure in the last couple of years from Wizards of the Coast, and that's saying something because there's blue shells like I said it again, and I said it yesterday. Mario Kart, like there's a blue shell equivalent, a legally distinct, different blue shell in Magic the Gathering. I think there's a Roadrunner and Wile E. Coyote references. This was the things that we were afraid of as players for Edge of Eternities, and thankfully, Edge of Eternities did not have like POW 2002, A Space Weirdness, card. Didn't have those. Then we started seeing the Spider-Man set, spoilers, which has had some pretty good cards in it, but now it's a 200 card base set, and there's welcome decks, bundles. I have it on my notes because I took them yesterday. Collector boosters and the art box, which has the 6 cards in it, kind of like Lord of the Rings. No commander sets. On top of this being a 200 card set. So the theory is that this was originally intended to be like an Assassin's Creed set, where Assassin's Creed only had 7 cards per pack. It was a 120, 130 card base set, and it was mirroring what March of the Machines Aftermath and what would have been the big score in Outlaws of Thunder Junction were. March of the Machines Aftermath was released, I think, like a month and a half after March of the Machines, and there were 5 card packs, and it was like a 80-something card set, a very minimal amount of cards, but they charged the same amount for those packs as a regular pack for 5 cards, and then Assassin's Creed was a little bit more because of the IP, and it was a 7 card pack, and both were such disasters that Outlaws of Thunder Junction folded in the big score set into its own set. So it was supposed to be Outlaws of Thunder Junction, and then like a month later, the big score, where now not only did Outlaws of Thunder Junction have the Outlaws of Thunder Junction cards in the packs, the bonus sheet packs, but now the big score in the same pack with collations and all that. It led to probably one of the most terrifying draft experiences for me personally, because you had to account for not just the bonus sheet stuff, but big score. That's how bad March of the Machines Aftermath was received, that it kind of had to screw over Outlaws of Thunder Junction a little bit. And then Assassin's Creed dropped a little bit after March of the Machine's Aftermath, and the player base thankfully spoke with their wallets and their opinions, and Wizards said no more. But that meant that they had to fundamentally change the Spider-Man set, I feel. And a lot of other people feel this way too, because it seems weird. It's a 200 card set. They initiated pick 2 drafts for Spider-Man set, and today I got to play midweek Magic on Arena, which was Foundation's pick 2 draft, and it was fun. It was fun. The draft was over like that, and I can only imagine in paper, and I've seen it on paper on Loading Ready Run when they did one with, I think, Bloomborough, and the whole video from draft to making the decks to playing the games was over in like an hour and a half, 2 hours. I can crank out at my local gaming store 2 pick 2 drafts in a day. Sign me up. But you kind of had to, I think they kind of invented it so people would play the Spider-Man set in a draft format, especially with it being such a minimum amount of new cards in the set. Trust me, there's plenty of different alternate arts for every card almost in the set. And having no commander products. So earlier in this year, beginning towards the tail end of last year, I made a prediction that we were going to get inundated with commander product when there were 7 sets coming out this year. Thankfully not, because Tarkir had the 5, but that was because of each clan of Tarkir was represented, which was okay. Edge of Eternities had 2. Final Fantasy had 4. And I think earlier in the year, for Aether Drift only had 2. So we're getting a respectable number of precons this time for 7 sets coming out. Then the Avatar set started getting spoiled a little bit, and they've been hitting home runs with this Avatar set. And I'm not a fan of Avatar: The Last Airbender, but I'm happy for you fans out there that are getting to see some happiness when it comes to Magic the Gathering correctly representing your fandom, if you will. They look great. The card art is amazing. The mechanics look fire, and I'm glad that y'all are happy. If I was a Spider-Man fan, I'd be a little bit upset. And if I was looking forward to the Spider-Man set, because we won't talk about the prices of the Spider-Man set yet or the Avatar pre-orders, because for some reason people are afraid that the Final Fantasy allocations, which mind you, the Final Fantasy set was the best-selling Magic set of all time, and apparently there will be no more printing of product. There isn't a second shipment happening, apparently. So it's sold out. And people are charging out the wazoo for prices on, especially the collector packs and the commander decks. I'm so glad I got the Final Fantasy X commander deck pre-con, which I heavily upgraded, I might add. And so already we're seeing enormous price spikes. Now, this is pre-ordering sets that aren't coming out for like a month or two, even if not longer. Avatar's the last set of the year. It's Spider-Man and then Avatar, so have at it you will, but, you know, Professor Tolarian Community College always says, buy singles. And so, yeah, that is the Magic news that has happened that I actually cared about during my break and vacation. I'm patiently waiting for Borderlands 4. It comes out September 12th. I will be playing a lot of it that day until I have to go to an XWW show that same day. And then next day I have another show. And then I won't really be able to grind into it until Sunday. And then Monday through Wednesday, I got to edit the show that I'm going to after XWW. And it's like, I'm glad that it got the release date jumped up to the 12th as opposed to the 23rd. But I'm like, man, I wish it came out on the 23rd because I got a whole lot of nothing to do that week. But I'm going to be playing a ton of it as much as I can, and I'm excited for it. I'm getting the Super Big Boy Collector's Digital Bundle because this is, once again, as I've said earlier, Borderlands 4 is one of my forever games, like Diablo 4, Path of Exile, and Path of Exile 2. We'll get into Path of Exile 2 in a bit. So I am bored. What do? I've been trying to find games. So I was playing Diablo 4 Season 9, and I got the Paragon level 200 and kind of said, all right, I've done it all. And then I was looking at Season 10, And it looks to be the start of some major changes that'll be implemented until the delayed expansion comes out. The expansion was supposed to come out this year, not going to come out till next year. But the Chaos gear that they're introducing, I think, is the first step towards a major rework in the skill tree for Diablo 4. I think the Paragon board might be getting a little bit, but I actually like the Paragon board as it is right now. It's in a good spot. The skill tree, however, is bad to the point that each class that you play has like an S tier build or two, and then everything else is just, why are you playing this? Is this like your 8th character this season? Is that why you're playing a Whirlwind Barbarian? You know, not Rend Barbarian or Earthquake Barbarian or, you know, Shadow Dance of Knives Rogue. You know, that's what I started the season as because I wanted to mix it up, you know? And so season 10 seems to be really good. It's not necessarily Powers again, even though it's kind of like Powers in a different skin, but I think they're starting to experiment and pre-test, if you will, the inevitable skill tree upgrade rework that's going to happen, I guess, when the expansion comes out sometime early next year. And I also decided to play Destiny 2. Now, Destiny 2 and I have a weird history with each other. I pre-ordered the bundle when it came out. This super awesome. I got the first year and a half of content or whatever, the first 2 expansions content. Played it for a couple months, and the play group I was with, we stopped playing. They all moved on to the next games, and Destiny 2 was fun with a group. So I played it a couple of years ago for like 2 hours, and I was like, all right, this is dumb. Went to play Destiny 2 again recently because, you know, for some reason my algorithm decided on YouTube to say, hey, we want you to play Destiny 2. And I did. And I regret it because I bought the game, which came with a single player campaign at launch, the Red War, I think it was called. And it's a really good campaign. It is no longer accessible due to being, quote unquote, vaulted by Bungie, meaning that content no longer exists in the game. So that super awesome bundle that I bought when the game came out with the first 2 expansions, it just lets me play the game even though it's now free to play. And I can't access the content that I bought. They said they would eventually re-release the content every now and again because they need to make sure that the experience is smooth and upgradable and updates are easier, and the game was too big. And I'm sitting here going like, Final Fantasy XIV, World of Warcraft would like to have a discussion with you. Because there's plenty of content in both of those games, and they've never had to sunset content for a looter shooter. At the end of the day, Destiny 2, that's all it is. And apparently, before I jumped in, there was a massive power nerf to everybody. It reset everybody's skills back down to like 0 and 10. And at the time, the most power you could have was like 2020 or something like that. And a couple of weeks before I started playing, when they released like their last like episode or something like that, it just kind of like power shifted everybody back down. So I was like, cool, I guess I jumped in at a perfect time. Everybody's back to 0-ish. A terrible onboarding experience, especially new player experience, because there's no campaign to play. You don't know the story of Destiny 2 unless you look it up on a Wikipedia, because there is tons of content that just doesn't exist and explains things that you will never know. Now, they do a half job at giving you story missions to at least fill in the gaps, but you play like an abbreviated version of like the last mission of that particular expansion, and it hits all the bullet points and it misses a lot of things. If you're blindly going into Destiny 2 as a new player, good luck on trying to figure out what's going on, because you won't. You can't. And I would have liked to have been able to play the campaign to see where things started, but, you know, that doesn't exist. Heck, they even sunsetted weapons about 6 months ago to the absolute dismay of the entire player base, to the point that Bungie had to say, oops, our bad, we're going to put these weapons back for you. So the thing is, the new player experience and the onboarding for it is terrible. Kind of like Bungie, the company right now, because that was something that I was blindly unaware of, that how bad of a company Bungie is to work for. They make great playing games. We're talking about the same studio that made Halo all the way up from Halo 1 all the way up to Halo Reach. And then they split from Microsoft or whatever's and went and made Destiny. Which actually, if you had a choice between playing the free-to-play Destiny 2 or paying the $20 to play Destiny 1, spend the $20, play Destiny 1. You can at least play the story, the campaign, and all the expansions, and nothing's ever been sunset, and nothing's ever been taken out of the game, even though you already bought it. Bungie, I think you can solve your own problems that you made by bringing back the campaigns from Destiny 2. Bringing back that story from Destiny 2. What little it is, because we are talking about a game here, a franchise. When Destiny 1 came out, a year before it came out, they scrapped the entire script. All the voice work that was done, all the script that was done, the story that was done, they scrapped it and let 5 other people who apparently were not writers, because the ego of the guy making the game, yes, we're talking about Bungie here, a very terrible company now at this point from what has been going on. Kind of like, certain heads of Gearbox, the Borderlands 4 company. Anyway, scrapped it, rewrote it. We're talking a year before. This is the equivalent of writing a movie, filming it, and then changing the entire script at the same amount of time, a year before launch, before it releases. And you got to refilm everything again. And sometimes you're not going to get the best takes. And in Destiny 1, when it first launched, Peter Dinklage was the voice of your companion, the ghost that follows you around. And his voice work is what you would describe as bare bones. The reason for that is Peter Dinklage was literally reading the script for the first time when he was doing the voiceovers. That's how slapdash haphazard this was, to the point that the voiceover director didn't even give him direction. This is honest truth. It is really hard to dry read something and get that emotion out and get that feeling out. It's hard to dry read. This is my second time doing this particular podcast because I forgot to hit the mic button yesterday. And even it's a little dry to me. And I had at least one go through over this. Peter Dinklage, however, literally had the script put in his hands. Hey, read this in the microphone and we'll make it work. Okay, what's my character? Just read the lines. So, unfortunately, Peter Dinklage was getting dunked on because of his voiceover work. And it's not his fault. He's not a voiceover artist. He was not given any direction at all because Bungie didn't know what the heck they were doing. And then a year later or so, like a couple months, something like that, they had another guy who's an actual voiceover artist re-record all the lines for Peter Dinklage's role and then put it in the game. So Peter Dinklage was taken out and then they replaced it with a voiceover artist, which I'm sure they paid the bare minimum of because, once again, apparently Bungie, and I'm only learning this recently, is a horrific company to work for. So yeah, that was what I've been doing, patiently waiting for Borderlands 4 to come out. And then the other action RPG that I play, the Diablo clone, if you will, Path of Exile 2, kind of dropped the hotness when it comes to their new patch. 0.3, the game is in preview. You cannot, it will be free to play when it launches sometime next year. But to get in the game, you have to spend $30. Now, to Grinding Gears credit, the people who made Path of Exile 1 and 2, when you buy cosmetics in the game, there's no power to buy. It's not a pay to win, pay to trade, but with other players easily, but you can still do that. As a free-to-play player, it's just a little bit more complicated. There's no power to be gained. There's just cosmetics and cool things to look at for your character and your hideouts. That's it. But when you buy packs, supporter packs and whatnot that get you this, you get an in-game currency equivalent, for the most part, to buy stash tabs, to buy map tabs, to buy the stash box items that you... the necessary amount of stash boxes that you will need for the influx of materials that you get in the game. So when you buy the $30 pack to get into Path of Exile 2's beta, theoretically closed beta, game preview, whatever it's called nowadays, you get the equivalent number to at least get some stash tabs. Now, if you've played POE 1, Path of Exile 1, and transfer over to 2, and you've already bought certain tabs in Path of Exile 1, they will carry over to Path of Exile 2, which is ginormous. So, 0.3, the Third Edict summary review. This is from Moblytics, a page that I'm going to be using for my starter build, or my build in general for this season of Path of Exile. It releases tomorrow, August 29th at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Things in this game that are being added and improved on. This will be literally their article from Moblytics. Act 4 and Interlude Acts. The campaign will no longer contain a cruel difficulty. What that means is, at the moment, there's only 3 acts in Path of Exile, 1, 2, and 3, and then you got to play 1, 2, and 3 over again on a harder difficulty, just to get you to like the level 60 to start taking on the end game, which is mapping, which is a whole different game unto itself, to get to the ultimate pinnacle boss fights, uber boss fights, if you will. And there will also be 3 interlude acts. These will replace the leveling experience through the campaign and take you straight to the endgame, so you don't have to repeat the first 3 acts anymore. Act 4 will take place in the Karuri archipelago as you search for an ancient weapon. The interlude acts will be linear side stories meant to supplement the leveling experience / time to the endgame. So, what is Act 4? Following the cliffhanger ending to Act 3, the story continues with the pursuit of Oriani and the Beast, the ultimate enemy in the game, the big bad, if you will. This time around, however, the player character is not only joined by the Hooded One, but is now accompanied by Doriani, the Val's civilization's resident Thaumatage, on a mission to seek out an ancient weapon powerful enough to disrupt the Beast. Doriani is from the past. He is brought back into the future before the calamity happens eons ago in Ray class, apparently. The artifact in question is the very instrument capable of bringing about the Third Edict. But there's a problem. The weapon has been fractured and its pieces are scattered across a new, previously unexplored region. To proceed, the player will need to retrieve and seek out each part and assemble the artifact. A dangerous task indeed. A Karuri voyage. I can never say that, Karuri. Right. Act 4 represents a significant shift in gameplay style of Path of Exile 2's campaign. Switching from a linear path in Acts 1 through 3, it's literally get from point A to point B, boss fight, point C to point D, boss fight, point D to point F, final boss fight, then Act 2. This time, however, the majority of the act takes place in the archipelago, a previously unexplored region, and that consists of several islands separated by bodies of water. To reach these islands, you'll need a boat, and that's where King's March comes into play, which is coming back from Path of Exile 1, which was the last expansion from Settlers of Kalgar, the second to last expansion in POE 1, probably the best expansion they ever did. And Path of Exile 2 takes place 20 years after Path of Exile 1. So let's be clear here, there's been a 20-year gap in between both games. There's a total of 8 islands that can be explored, each with their own unique design and feel, from different monsters and terrain to boss encounters and environmental effects. The islands can be explored freely and taken on as you feel. You don't need to go through A to B to C. You can go A, F, B, C, G, whatever. You can take on the islands as you see fit. An example of one of the areas you can explore is Kin Island, a strange landmass covered in volcanic rock and curious yellow-colored crystal formations. New encounters and timeless treasures. The Archipelago introduces a swath of new monster types and boss fights. In Act 4 alone, you'll encounter 100 distinctly new monsters, adding towards the goal of 600 game-wide by the time Path of Exile 2 reaches its full release, which full release is going to happen when all the character classes are put in the game and all the acts are done. They at least said the druid isn't making it in this expansion, in this patch, and people were hoping for it, but they said we would rather crank out this because we're having a little bit of difficulty working on the druid. We're also not releasing the game full for free to play, because when it comes out, you don't have to pay a single cent to play this game until we have all the character classes and all the acts done, which I think is fair. In addition to new encounters, you'll traverse 16 new zones across the regions covered in this new act. And then when you're done that, interludes, a temporary replacement. The end of Act 4 will bring the character to the beginning of several mini-acts, known as interludes, which will temporarily take place of Acts 5 and 6 until Acts 5 and 6 become part of the game. So they're making strides. They're making great strides here in this. Now, support gems have gotten a major boost here. Some major changes are coming to support gem system. Support gems are no longer limited to one per character. This means you can use the same support gem on multiple active gems. So you have your skills that are actives. Say you have like a crossbow, and you get the firebolt, and then a lightning bolt, and then a firebolt. You could put rapid casting as an example of this, which will have a 15% increased cast speed. But up until this patch comes out, you can only use rapid casting on one skill. That was it. So now they're changing it so all your crossbow bolts can now have rapid casting put on there, making it faster to cast. Secondly, support gems now have tiers. You'll unlock higher tiers. Certain gems will have different tiers. And this becomes more powerful as you tier them up, but some may grant unique effects that make you decide whether you want to use a lower tier or a higher tier. So sometimes you may just want that one tier to get your arrow to fling into 3 different bolts. Whereas on tier 3, for example, it might fling into 3 bolts, and those 3 bolts might fling into 3 more bolts, but it's going to take all your mana to do it. So you can only cast it one time until you regen your mana pool or use a potion. So there's things. There's a nice little cross balance here. Lineage support gems are now support gems that are like unique items, according to the article. They grant very powerful and unique effects to your skills. They're obtained through the endgame, which is maps, which after you complete Acts 1 through 4 and the interlude campaigns, you basically get this huge, giant, procedurally generated map, and your quest is to find the pinnacle boss fights to kind of figure out, to put a stop to certain things, the blight or the darkness, if you will. And you get maps that basically make it harder and give you boons and buffs to get more rewards. It's a whole different game. Once you finish the game, you get to the real game, if you will. But the lineage support gems are a new support gem that can be socketed and used to support your skill gems. However, they are not obtained using an uncut skill gem, support gem. Instead, these are endgame edition, providing powerful and often niche or situational bonuses that can enable new builds. There's approximately 40 of these bad boys, and the example they give is Ratha's Assault. It's a lineage ammunition projectile. Double-barreled, cost multiplier 110%, requires level 65. Support crossbow ammunition skills, causing them to load multiple extra bolts. Supported skills cannot be reloaded normally, instead loading bolts when you dodge. Supported crossbow ammunition skills can't be reloaded. It loads 3 bolts when you dodge, and you skill 3 additional bolts. So basically, you get to fire more with the Ratha's Assault. New loot and potential exclusive drops. Some lineage gems will be added to the core drop pool for endgame content, so you'll always have a chance to happen upon a rare drop whilst mapping in endgame. Powerful new build options are basically what Lineage is doing is trying to make more builds accessible and more builds viable. Big thing, sprinting has now been added as a form of movement. This will allow you to quickly traverse through maps much easier than before. The problem is, do not get hit by an enemy. It will stun you. Apparently, the stun is forever. And in this game, you can die very quickly. And if you bump into an enemy while you're sprinting and you fall down, you probably aren't getting back up. Now, I love the sprinting option because sometimes in maps, the end game, if you will, they are big. And sometimes what happens is you get all the way across one part of the map and you still have like 5 or 6 enemies to kill. And you have to run all the way back to the beginning because you didn't look left when you looked right. So now sprinting will at least help in that aspect. And I like the bump with sprinting because I want to see what the first speed run does. Because Path of Exile does have speed run competitions that they will play, that they will host in their game. And I want to see what the people who have taken apart this game fundamentally, know every in and out of the game. I want to see how they use the sprinting mechanic. It's going to be an interesting race, that's for sure. But if you are on the fence about playing Path of Exile, guess what? Tomorrow, the 29th, August 29th, whenever this comes out, whenever patch 0.3 drops that weekend from the 29th to the 1st, September 1st, is free to play. You get the chance to try the game out before you want to purchase the early access. Yes, it's a purchase the early access, but as I said before, you'll get the in-game equivalent of currency to use in the game to buy the stash tabs. And if you want stash tabs to buy, at least buy a map tab, a currency tab, and at least one auction tab so you can sell things. That'll make your life easier. Those were the 3 tabs that I would at least, at a minimum, map, currency, and map tab, stash tab, and the selling tab. Deflection and armor. Deflection is a new mechanic tied to evasion and dexterity, similar to spell suppression in Path of Exile 1. Deflection will be gained through armor modifiers and passive skill tree points. The thing is, nobody ever really uses armor in the game. It's always evade. Evade, mana shield are always infinitely energy shield, are always better at the moment in Path of Exile 2 than armor. Maybe 1 or 2 builds, super tier builds, use armor. Mainly melee. But yeah, other than that, it's all been evasion dexterity. New modifier, percentage armor applies to elemental damage. Armor is also getting extra defenses to work with as well. You can now gain percentage of armor also applies to elemental damage taken from hits. So they are increasing the buffs, if you will, or the viability of actually having an armor on a good armor number on your character, other than pumping things up with armor. This game is complicated. Pro tip, if you're going into the free play weekend brand new, look up a build guide. It will not decrease your love of the game. It won't take the joy away your game. This is one of the most complicated action ARPGs ever made. And the only thing I could say is imagine Final Fantasy X. The grid system in Final Fantasy X, the sphere grid system of Final Fantasy X. Jack it up about 30 times bigger and 100 more times complicated. You start to have Path of Exile 2's passive tree. When you get to the end game, there's an Atlas tree that pumps your maps up, which is almost as big. Especially in the first game, which is almost as big as the skill tree. It is massive. Do yourself a favor. Nobody's going to knock you. Almost everybody does it. 1% of the player base in Path of Exile 1 and 2 are good enough to do this blind. Okay? Don't be ashamed of it. I'm a casual Path of Exile 2 and Path of Exile 1 player with hundreds, if not 1,000 hours, if not more, in the game. I still use build guides. The rise of Abyssal Abyssal. Rise of the Abyssal. Rise of the Abyss. League mechanic, which also 0.3 is the first official league of Path of Exile 2. Path of Exile 2 last league was Mercenaries, and that was just basically fighting mercenaries and getting a new character in your squad. You can have a partner, an AI controlled partner, if you will, that you can equip up. The season before that, we kind of called the beginning, like a new beginning. It's the beginning of the game, which it was. So Rise of the Abyssal will be the new league mechanic for 0.3. If you played POE 1, you're more than likely aware of how Abyss works. Abyss crafting. Defeating Abyss monsters will lead to a new currency type, bones. These bones can be applied to specific items, granting them to an extra modifier that you can choose from a pool of 3. Now, what Abyss mechanic is, there will be a crack in the earth in the game on the map that has Abyss in it. And you follow the crack around until it opens up and you beat a horde of monsters, if you will. When you're done that horde, it may crack again, and you follow that crack once more to beat another horde of monsters, and sometimes it'll do it for a third time. And eventually it'll spawn 2 mini bosses or a mini boss, and you have to fight them. And when you successfully defeat the Abyss, a treasure chest will open up. Now, in Path of Exile 1, it would open up Abyss gems and Abyss gear, which were usually belts that could have gems socketed into them, or have gear that would have Abyss gem type that you could put into it. Path of Exile 2 doesn't do that, but when you go to the Well of Souls, which is where you cash in your bones on this league in 0.3 Path of Exile 2, the example they give is a rune branch. It's a Gemini bow, quality 20%, physical damage 172 to 339, requires level 78 and 163 dexterity. Bow attacks fire an additional arrow. It's also got these stats under it. 152% increased physical damage, adds 18 to 39 physical damage, plus 3.65% to critical hit chance, and 17% increased attack speed. And then it's got like a matrix like glyph on the bottom of it. That is your Abyss secret. And when you toss it into the Well of Souls and have an appropriate amount of bones, it'll give you an option of 3. And the example they give is 24% increased physical damage, plus 43 to accuracy rating. Or you can add 2 to 41 lightning damage to it, or you can add 23 to 37 cold damage. Now, if this was me and I was in that example, I could be wrong, but I'm doing the 24% increased physical damage and the accuracy rating. That would be that. Now, the endgame changes. With Act 4 and the Interlude Acts introducing new monsters and bosses, the endgame atlas will now also have 25 new endgame maps. These new map layouts will host new monsters and bosses to challenge. An example is the Val Vault. The few Val who survived the cataclysm must now survive each other. So you're getting into a Val fight in that particular map. Atlas Tree is going to change as well. It'll have sections for Breach, Delirium, Expedition, and Ritual will now grant the initial 2 passive points much sooner in the end game. You will no longer need to challenge the Pinnacle boss for your first 2 points, but rather need to complete a much simpler quest, which is fun and cool for me. I might actually wind up doing that because I've never even fought a Pinnacle boss in maps. I never really get that far with how much I play this game. Shocking, I know. As I said, super casual hardcore player here with a ton of hours in POE 2. Pinnacle boss splinters. Second Pinnacle bosses will now be accessed through splinters, and you can challenge different difficulties with a different amount of splinters. So if you want the basic tier 1 fight, it costs 50 splinters. If you want the mid-range fight, it's 75 splinters. And if you want the uber fight, it's 100 splinters. So it'll make it easier, and I might actually be able to take a Pinnacle boss down. Finally, crafting changes is it introducing new crafting changes. All your materials, crafting mats, if you will, are all stuff like Orb of Transmutation, upgrades a normal item to a magic item, or, upgrades a magic item to a rare item, or gives more suffixes and affixes to items. It's a complicated thing. But now currency orbs will now have tiers that affect the modifier you roll. And the example here is a perfect orb of transmutation, which upgrades a normal item to a magic item with one modifier. Currency will now have regular, greater, and perfect tiers. This also applies to augments, regals, exalts, and chaos orbs. So all the crafting materials are getting perfect, a greater chaos orb, perfect chaos orb. Obviously, the perfect ones are going to be the much harder ones to find in the late end game, but you can, from start to finish, you can craft an item with the highest tier modifiers. Essences are getting 4 tiers now: lesser, regular, greater, and perfect. That basically means you can use a lesser essence to craft a armor or weapon that you have much sooner. A lot of the times, some people will just hold on to their essences until they drop something in mid to late game because they're afraid to use it. Now you don't really have to, because lesser will drop, and okay, I need to pump my power up into this weapon. Let me do that. So I like that as well. Then they have exceptional items that are dropping. Exceptional base items, which is white, which is common, have higher quality or extra sockets. Exceptional unique items also exist. So what happens is, in this game, armor and weapons can have quality. And the higher the quality, up to 20% that you can craft on your own without using a vowel orb or anything, is 20% quality. So that gives you a boost in damage, it gives you a boost in armor, it'll give you a boost in everything viable for that piece of gear. Now it can go even higher. I think up to 30% is the max. And if you get a rare, a common 30% item drop, that is going to be money in the crafting portion. And then sanctified items are a new way to try and craft the best items. This will randomize the value of modifiers anywhere from 80 to 120%, meaning you can reach values higher than possible before, because the game has 5 tiers or something like that. Tier 5 is the lowest, tier 1 is the highest, or it might be reversed either way. So say tier 1 weapon does 100 damage max, 80 to 100 damage max. Now if you increase by 120%, it'll get 120% more, not only to the baseline, but also the maximum number as well. And then finally, major trade update. This is the biggest thing, and we adored this. This was actually announced a couple days after the big stream from Grinding Gear Games on everything involved in 0.3, and then they dropped this one as well because they weren't ready to announce it yet. Major update is finally coming to the Path of Exile franchise: async trading. With this new system, players will be able to set up shop and trade on the marketplace without needing to manually trade with players. While searching up an item online, you can now immediately teleport to the hideout of a player and purchase their item through a merchant window. So in Act 4, when you get the King's March, you will have an NPC that will act as your shop that you can list items for, and all stash tabs that are able to have that are selling, you can turn those into that as well. So you can have multiple tabs of stuff to sell. Normally what happens is you have to open up the website, and for console players, there's a little bit of confusion. Some people think that you actually have to open up your phone. No. On Xbox X and PlayStation 5, it'll open up its own web browser. I know X uses Microsoft Edge. I know. PlayStation 5, I don't know what web browser it'll open up, but it'll automatically go to Grinding Gear's website. You search for an item, you look for it, and then you invite player to party, or send request, I want to buy your item. They'll send you a party invite, you party invite, then you got to warp to them, and then you got to do a trade, and you got to make sure everything. No, I can just list an item for X amount of crafting materials, chaos orbs, divine orbs, whatever the currency going for of this patch will be, and I can set it for 10 chaos orbs. And somebody can see that I'm selling this bow for 10 chaos orbs that they want. They'll want to buy it. It'll teleport them to my hideout, or wherever I'm at, what base I'm at in the campaign. They'll talk to this person, and then they can open up the tab and just buy it. You can put negotiating prices as well, but I don't do that. So that is a huge thing for trading, because at least This is infinitely better as well than Path of Exile 1's auction house, because you can click on auction house tab and make a buy and do the same thing. If you could do online, like go onto the website and see, but you make an offer and then you have to wait for them to accept it, and half the time they reject it. This makes it so much easier. You can put a firm price on, this is how much it's going for. So I love the new trading. And finally, weapon swap time has been removed. There was a little bit of cooldown on weapon swaps because that's been something that's been wanting to make viable. You can actually have multiple Atlas passive trees for each type of weapon swap that you do. Yeah, this game's complicated. That's why you should look up a build guide. Moblytics, Maxroll GG. Look up a build guide at least. Do yourself a favor, especially in this free-to-play weekend. You don't want to get stuck in the Act 1 end boss because you just were blindly going into it. 150 plus new notables have been added to the passive tree. The passive tree is even bigger now. 35 new areas, 24 new bosses, major skill class reworks and buffs are coming, and new supporter packs as well. But that's it. And Path of Exile 2 0.3 Third Edict is going to be an amazing season, and they have a lot to live up to and forget and make good on, because when 0.2 came out, it was bad. The first couple of weeks of that season were really bad. Everything was harder for no reason. You did less damage. The enemies did more damage. You were slower. It was a whole big kerfuffle when that came out. And over the course of the couple of months in the season, theoretically, for patch 0.2, it got better. It did get better, but that initial player base drop happened for a reason. And they're trying their best to make sure that doesn't happen again. So yeah, Path of Exile 0.3, we talked about Diablo 4 Season 9 and 10. We talked about Destiny 2 and how Bungie is a terrible company, because I patiently wait for Borderlands 4 to come out, which has equally terrible company leadership, except it's just one or two people at Gearbox. Apparently every upper management in Bungie is a terrible human being. Allegedly they're terrible human beings. We talked about Magic stuff, and that's it. And, just because I'm moving to Jersey doesn't mean this podcast isn't stopping, because we're not stopping here, folks. Much love to you all, especially Billy Chaser out there. Get better soon. I'm praying for you, man. My name is Dom Douglas, and may your top deck always be mythic, because POE Season 0.3 is cooking.